طريقتنا الصحبة والخير في الجميع. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله يحب المحسنين. Allah ihsan edenleri sever.
Allah Almighty loves the doers of good. Allah Almighty loves the benevolent people.
İhsan eden insanlar Allah Azze ve Celle'nin yanında makbul insanlardır.
Those people who do good, people who are benevolent, are people who are acceptable in the divine presence.
Onlar kimdir? İhsan eden insanlar
Who are the benevolent people, who are the doers of good.
Başta insanlara ihsan eden Allah Azze ve Celle onun sevdiği kullar, en sevdiği kullar peygamberler.
It is Him, Allah Almighty, who is the most gracious, the most benevolent. And then it is those beloved servants of Allah Almighty who do goodness.
Allah'ın sevdiği kullar, ihsan eden kullar, ihsan eden demek.
And it is those doers of good whom Allah Almighty loves. It is the beloved servants of Allah Almighty who are the doers of goodness.
Her türlü iyiliği yapan, insanlara her türlü güzelliği veren insanlardır.
Allah Almighty loves those who perform charitable acts. Allah Almighty loves those who perform all kinds of good deeds and who perform actions of kindness.
En büyük ihsan eden de Peygamber Efendimiz Muhammed sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem.
And the person who was the most benevolent and who was the greatest doer of goodness was our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
En büyük odur. Ondan sonra peygamberler, ondan sonra
he was the greatest among all doers of good, and after him come all the prophets.
Sahabeler,
then the companions,
sahabeler de evliyalar, ulemalar,
then the awliya, the true scholars,
meşayihler,
and the sheikhs.
Bu ihsan, insanlara iyilik, güzellik.
They are the possessors of benevolence, and they are the doers of good.
Gösteren, veren onlardır.
They are the ones who show all kinds of kindness and to do all kinds of charitable acts for people.
Allah'ın sevdiği şeyleri onlar da sever. Allah ihsan edenleri sever diyor. Onlar da ellerinden ne varsa Allah yolunda verirler.
Allah Almighty loves those who do good acts. Allah Almighty loves those who are benevolent. And likewise, those people who possess benevolence, they themselves love to perform acts of goodness, acts of kindness, and to perform charitable deeds.
Allah için verirler.
They give for the sake of Allah Almighty, and they love to give for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Allah'a şükür bu yollarda onlarla beraber olduk. Onlarla beraber Peygamber Efendimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem'le beraber o aynı yolu gösterdiler.
We are thankful to Allah Almighty that we have been allowed to be in the companionship of those doers of goodness, and we are thankful to Allah Almighty that we have been in the companionship of those who bring us together with our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
Güzel yolları gösterdiler. O güzel günleri de onlarla beraber yaşadık Allah'a şükür.
And we are thankful to Allah Almighty for all those blessed moments we have lived together with all those doers of goodness who have shown us and have taught us the way of our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And we are thankful to Allah Almighty that He made us experience those doers of goodness.
Şeyh Efendi tabi, Şeyh Nazım Hazretleri onun cömertliğine, ihsanlığına kimse yetişemez.
And thus, Maulana Sheikh Nazim was a kind, a benevolent and charitable person. Without comparison, nobody among us can reach his generosity, his kindness.
Bu dünyada hele bu vakitte hiç onun zerresi kadar bile olamaz kimse.
And there was no one at his time, and still today, there's no one that can even be an atom of his kindness. There's no one who can even be a grain of his generosity, of Maulana Shaykh Nazim.
O kadar Allah'ın aşkıyla insanlara ihsan vermiş, yapmış.
His heart was filled with the love of Allah Almighty, and it was that immense love to drove that kindness and made him perform all those charitable deeds and acts of kindness for people.
Tabii onun hayatı Allah yolunda olduğu için
Maulana Shaykh Nazim dedicated his life to the way of Allah Almighty,
güzel bir hayat
and therefore he led a beautiful life.
oldu. Tabii eziyet dünya bakımından dünyanın maişetine, insanların çektiği sıkıntılara göre
Yes, indeed, he also faced difficulty, as this world is a place where one encounters all kinds of difficulties in order to make one's living.
çok darlık, eziyet falan çekti.
And yes, indeed, Maulana Shaykh Nazim underwent all kinds of trouble and hardship and difficulty.
Efendi ama Allah yolunda olduğu için ona tesir etmedi.
However, that hardship and difficulty did not affect Maulana Shaykh Nazim, because he dedicated his life to the way of Allah Almighty, and that was enough for him to overcome all those hardships and difficulties he faced.
Onun yolundan ayırmadı, yolunu şaşırtmadı.
And it was his dedication and commitment to the way of Allah Almighty that he never went astray, and that he never parted ways from the way of Allah Almighty.
İnsanlara güzellik gösterdi.
Throughout his entire life, Maulana Shaykh Nazim showed people the way of Allah Almighty and the way of beauty.
İnsanın kaderi Allah Azze ve Celle'nin elindedir.
Destiny, a person's destiny is within the hands of Allah Almighty.
Kaderle ruh, bunlar Allah'ın Azze ve Celle'nin sırlarından bir sırdır.
Destiny and one's soul is a secret among Allah Almighty's secrets.
Efendi'nin kaderi işte bu başta İstanbul'a gelip üniversiteyi okuyup
And it was Maulana Shaykh Nazim's destiny to first come to Istanbul, where he graduated at the university.
bitirmeden Allah yolun için, Allah aşkı için onu bırakıp da şeyhini bulup Şam'da ondan
But he did not continue further studies, but instead he gave up everything for the way of Allah Almighty, and he searched and found his sheikh in Damascus.
sonra ta 80 senesine kadar Efendi Kıbrıs'ta kalmamıştı, yani ev falan yoktu.
And up until 1980, he did not used to stay in Cyprus with having a house.
80 senesinde işte Şam'dan artık tecelli Kıbrıs'a intikal etti diye.
It was during the 1980s when Maulana Shaykh Nazim said that the manifestation changed, and that he was made to move from Damascus to Cyprus, where he then settled.
Şam'ı bıraktı. Kıbrıs'ta şimdiki gördüğümüz makamın olduğu yerde kimse yoktu.
Thus he left Damascus to come to Cyprus, to the place where today's maqam is to be found. And there, And the surroundings of that house was nothing back at that time.
Orası Kıbrıs'ın uzak bir yeri sayılırdı onlara göre.
That place where Maulana's house still is today was back then in the days a very remote place.
Ne iş var ne güç var.
There was no place to work, nothing to find there.
Yani 1000 kişi, 2000 kişi bile yoktu o tarafta. Yani bu
In that region, there were not even 1,000 or 2,000 people living there.
kadar ki şimdi gördüğünüz evler falan yoktu.
And if you travel there today, you will find many houses and people living there. But back then, there was no one, nothing, not even houses.
Baba oranın hani her şey izinle, emirle orayı ona seçildi.
But upon the instruction and the divine order, Maulana Sheikh Nazim was made to move there and to settle in that house which we know today.
O evi aldı.
And he bought that house.
O işte onun evin alması da bir şeydi, bir işaretle olduydu.
And that even buying that house was based on a sign.
Çünkü o ev eski, çok eski bir ev, yani 200 seneden fazla bir evdir, 200 seneden fazla bir evdir.
And that house is very old. It is more than 200 years old.
O savaş zamanında oraya bir bomba düşmüş. Oradaki insan, bir iki insan, kadıncağız ölmüş orada.
And during wartime, a bomb had been dropped onto that house, and the woman living there died.
Onu da işte Şeyh Baba orayı beğendi ama oturulacak gibi değildi. Hiçbir şey yoktu.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim liked that house, but that house was not in a state to, in fact, live there.
Aldı orasını.
And he bought that house, nevertheless.
İşte o alması da bir güzel hikayeydi.
And the way that house was bought is in itself a very beautiful story.
Adam satıyordu orasını, işte fiyat filan belirledi.
And the owner of that house, he gave that, he sold the house and he gave a price to the house.
Şeyh Baba tamam dedi o fiyatı.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim, when he learned about the price of that house from the owner, said, I accept that price, that's okay.
Sonra oradaki bir tane ihvan vardı. Bir pazarlık yapayım dedi.
And back in the days, there was a brother who said, let me negotiate the price to Maulana.
O vakit, o zamanın fiyatı 1 milyon TL'ydi o vakit. 1 milyon TL o zamanın TL'si.
And the price of that house back in those days was 1 billion Turkish lira.
Allah bilir ne kadar şimdi yani.
Only Allah knows how much that is worth today.
Gitti pazarlık yaptı o ihvan oraya.
And then that brother went to the owner of the house in order to negotiate the price.
1 milyon TL'yi 1 milyon 200 bin aldı.
And then the price changed from 1 million Turkish lira to 1,200,000 lira.
Pazarlık 200 bin lira pazarlık yaptı.
He made negotiations to increase the price from 1 million lira to 1,200,000 lira.
Bu meseleye biz gülerdik.
And that is something we always laughed about.
Şeyh Baba'nın adeti zaten.
But that is how Maulana Sheikh Nazim would negotiate the price.
Pazarlığı tersten yapar Şeyh Baba.
He would always negotiate by increasing the price.
Bir derse 1,5 verir onun yerine.
So if something is 1, Maulana Sheikh Nazim would negotiate the price to buy it for 1.5. He would increase and pay more.
Bu zaten kendisi adamcağız ihvan, aklı evvel olan akıllı ihvan gitti pazarlık yapacak, daha düşüreceğini 200 bin lira üstüne koydu.
So that brother was a very clever one, even so clever, more clever than intelligent, that he went to negotiate the price, and instead of dropping the price, he managed to actually increase the price for Maulana.
Aldılar Allah'a şükür.
But still, the house was bought.
Burada bir işte geçen bu gene bu hikmet, her şeyde bir hikmet var.
And we must know that there is a wisdom behind everything.
Efendim meşayihlerin kendilerini Allah'a bırakmışlar, Allah'a tevekkül etmişler.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim, like all the great sheikhs, they are people who have dedicated themselves and who have submitted themselves and surrendered themselves to the will of Allah Almighty.
Ne olursa bir hikmet var.
And they look for the wisdom of Allah Almighty behind everything.
Hikmeti var diye. Tabii o fiyat para Şeyh Efendi'de yoktu.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim did in fact not have the money, that money that was requested.
O para yoktu. Adam da istiyor. Orada bir tane ihvan vardı. Eski ihvanları, bunlar ağalar.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim did not have actually the money to buy the house, but there was another brother who was there who did have the money, and that brother, he was a very noble person, noble like a lord.
Çok mert insanlar.
And he was a very noble, brave person.
Kendisi de babası da ailesi de hep ağalar şeydi.
And himself, his brother, his father, his family, they were very noble people like lords.
Demiş Şeyh Baba bana bunu bir para gelene kadar 1 milyon borç istedi Şeyh Efendi. Hay hay dedi.
And then Maulana Sheikh Nazim said to that brother, would you loan me the money to buy the house and I will give it back to you once I have it? And that person said, yes, of course.
Şeyh Baba verdi o parayı.
And he gave Maulana Sheikh Nazim the money in order to buy the house.
Para gelince Şeyh Baba tabi kimse, şimdiki insanlar bir borç aldı mı da artık borç selam söylesin paraya.
And Maulana Sheikh Nazim, he was not like people today when they take a loan. When you give a loan, that money is gone.
Kimse borçtan para gelir gelmez Şeyh Efendi hemen gitti takdim etti.
But Maulana Sheikh Nazim returned that money as soon as he had it and gave that loan back.
Mübareğe Allah rahmet etsin. Geçen hafta vefat etti. Mustafa Hacı Ali diye bir.
And may Allah be pleased with his soul. Haji Mustafa Ali Effendi, he just passed away last week.
Mübarek baba yiğit bir adamdı yani hakikaten.
He was a blessed person, a very brave and strong man.
Şimdiye kadar hani eskiden beri her hafta dergahın yemeğini, etini, sütünü, yumurtasını, tavuğunu, tavukçudur gönderir. Hiç
And back from the past till today, he would send meat, rice, food, and himself raised chicken and sold eggs, and he would send to the dergah every week.
Satmadan şey yapardı. Ona takdim etti. Adam dedi ben bunu almak için vermedim.
And when Maulana Sheikh Nazim returned the loan, that person, that noble man, rejected it. He said, I did not give it in order to receive it back.
Allah için verdim dedi.
I gave it for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Yani o şeyi almadı.
And he did not accept to get the loan paid back.
O adam Allah rahmet eylesin, mekanı cennet olsun. Şimdi Şeyh Baba'ndandır muhakkak.
May Allah Almighty bless his soul. May Allah Almighty be pleased with him. And may he be in paradise. And God, Allah knows he is now with Maulana Sheikh Nazim in the hereafter.
Tavukçuluk yapardı. Güzel işçileri de kötü değildi.
And he would raise chicken and sell eggs, and he had a good business.
Şeyh Baba bir ev aldı. Ondan sonra müteahhitliğe başladı. Meşahiler böyle şeyin altında kalmaz.
And he bought a house for Maulana Sheikh Nazim, and soon after that, he became a real estate manager, and he had so many more estates he would then deal and manage and sell. And that is the blessing. When the friends of Allah Almighty are shown an act of kindness, they will return that favor manifold.
Bir ev verdi Şeyh Baba'ya, 10.000 ev yaptı Allah'a şükür.
And he gave one house to Mawlana Sheikh Nazim, and through that blessing, Mawlana Sheikh Nazim returned that favor and made him make multiple houses.
Öyle bir şey verdi. Meşahların işte ihsanları böyledir.
And he gave one house to Mawlana Sheikh Nazim, and Mawlana Sheikh Nazim returned that favor with making him and opening up the way for him to make 1,000 houses for him. And that is how gracious and how benevolent and how charitable the saints, the friends of Allah Almighty are.
O şey güzel bir hatıradır. O mübarede Allah rahmet eylesin. İşte geçen hafta şey yaptı.
And this is a very nice memory we have with him, and may Allah Almighty be pleased with his soul. He passed away last week.
Vefat etti. Onun babası da en eski ihvanlardan biriydi.
And his father too was one of the oldest brothers following this way.
Hacı Ali Efendi. Kendisi Mustafa, babası Hacı Ali.
And his name was Hacı Ali Efendi. His name was Hacı Mustafa Efendi.
Mustafa Hacı Ali de abileri filan. Hepsi, annesi de, kardeşleri, hepsi iyi insanlar.
Their brothers, their mother, their entire family were good people.
Yani o ihsan etmek büyük bir fazilettir. Allah'ın sevdiği şeydir.
To be benevolent, to perform charitable acts, to do acts of kindness is a characteristic Allah Almighty loves.
Onlar da ihsan sahibidir.
And those people were possessors of benevolence.
Muhakkak onlar da bu karşılığını hem dünyada gördüler hem ahirette de.
And they saw the reward of doing good both in this world and as well as in the hereafter.
Muhakkak, onun hiç şüphe yok.
There's no doubt about this.
Orada da büyük ikramlar olacak.
And their generosity in this world will be rewarded in the hereafter abundantly.
Ki dediğimiz gibi 40-50 seneden beri, daha önce de verdi ama bizim dergah işte 40 seneden beridir Lefka'daki dergah.
And our dergah in Lefka has now been in service for 40-50 years.
Her hafta onun ikramları geliyor.
And every week he would donate provisions to the dergah.
Gelen dervişan, ev halkı dağıtılıyor, yapılıyor.
And his donations were distributed among the people of the household there, the dergah, to the guests, to people there.
Yani bazı öyle insan nadir, çok nadir olarak bulunur.
And people like such people are very rare.
Adam bir defa verir, 2 defa verir, 3. defa işte buradaki maşallah zenginler de bir pirinç gönderir, ondan sonra vermeyeceğiz.
And rich people generally they give once, they give twice, but the third time they say, I already sent rice once, and they don't send another time.
Verme.
But we are not in need of it.
Allah, zaten senden almıyoruz, Allah gönderiyor.
We are not expecting from you. We are asking from Allah Almighty.
Versen sende kalsın.
What you are going to give can remain with you. We don't need what you give.
Ötekisi gönderir, bilmem et gönderir, onu da vermeyeceğim. Verme.
And then there are people who, for example, send meat, and then they stop it and say, I'm not going to send anymore. Don't send it. We don't need it.
İhsan eden ihsan bulur.
Those who do good will find goodness. Those who are benevolent will themselves receive charity.
Onun için Allah'ın sevdiği kullar ihsan eden kullar.
Allah Almighty loves those who perform acts of kindness, charitable deeds, and to do goodness.
İhsan eden kullar, onlardır Allah'ın sevdiği kullar. Onun için
Allah Almighty loves the doers of good.
yani niyeti olsun, bir şeyden eksilecek diye korkan insan vermesin.
Those who are afraid of losing, those who are afraid of their possession to diminish, they should not give.
Onun korktuğu olur, eksilir.
They are afraid, and what they are afraid of is going to happen.
Yok, eksilmeyecek diye verirse eksilmez Allah'ın izniyle.
Those who do not fear that things will decrease, they must know that it will not decrease for them.
Bu çok mühim şeylerdir bunlar. Bu dünya için insan korkar, ne olacak, ne kalacak.
These are important matters because people, they're afraid about the state and how things go in this world.
Allah vermiş, işte sen de ver ki daha fazla.
Because you must know that, don't worry, because it is Him, Allah Almighty, who gave to you. So give and it will increase.
Allah sana versin.
You must give so that Allah Almighty may give to you.
Allah'ın mühim olan Allah'ın sevdiği insanlardan olmak.
And it's not about accumulating things, it is about becoming a servant whom Allah Almighty loves.
Vallahu yuhibbul muhsinin. İhsan edenleri Allah sever.
Allah Almighty loves the doers of good.
Bizim dünyadaki gayemiz oraya buraya gezmek mi, yiyip içmek mi, şey yapmak.
What is our goal in our lives? It's not about traveling and eating this or that.
En büyük gaye bizim Müslüman insan gayesi Allah'ı razı etmek.
As Muslims, our ultimate goal is to make our Lord Allah Almighty be pleased with us.
İlahi ente maksudi ve rıdâke matlub ediyor. Sen maksudum sensin.
You are our target, O our Lord. You are our goal.
Rızan matlubumdur.
And to make you pleased with us with what we desire.
Allah razı olsun ki onu nail olduktan sonra hayatın manası, insanın yaşantısının manası elde olmuş olur.
If you succeed in making your Lord Allah Almighty be pleased with you, then you will have fulfilled the purpose of life.
Çünkü çoğu insan ne yaşıyoruz, neye geldik, neye gidiyoruz?
People ask, why do we live? Why have we come into this world? Why are we going to die or leave this world?
Vallahi Allah sana her şeyi vermiş.
Allah Almighty gave you everything.
Sen onun istediğini yapmasan, sen ne yaparsan hiçbir fayda etmez.
But if you don't do what your Lord Allah Almighty expects you to do, then there will be no benefit, no use in nothing you do.
Hiçbir kıymeti yok.
Nothing you do will have any value.
Dünyada da sana kıymet olmaz, ahirette de kıymet olmaz.
And you will have neither esteem, neither in this world nor in the hereafter.
Onun için insanoğlu aklını çalıştırması lazım.
People need to use their minds.
Biz ne için yarattı Allah'ı?
And they must become aware of why Allah Almighty created them.
Allah Azze ve Celle Kur'an-ı Azimüşşan'da diyor وَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا yani sizi oyun eğlence için boşuna yaratmadık diyor.
Allah Almighty makes clear in the Holy Quran that we did not create you for amusement or entertainment. We did not create you without purpose.
Bugün insanlar dünya için kendilerini tatmin etmek için harap ediyorlar kendilerini.
People destroy themselves and ruin themselves in order to satisfy their egos.
İçki içiyorlar.
They drink alcohol.
uyuşturucu alıyorlar.
They take drugs.
Her türlü şeyi zannediyorlar ki bunları aldık mı biz hayatımızın manası geldi.
They do all kinds of bad things, and they think by doing so that they are fulfilling the purpose of their lives.
Öyle bir şey var mı? O zaten alırken zaten biliyor. Hiç hayatın alakası olmayan şeyler, kendini hayvan seviyesinden daha aşağı indirdiğini.
But when they take those drugs, they in fact know that they are in reality distancing themselves from the purpose of their lives, because they lose their minds when they take those drugs and get into in a state worse than animals.
Hayvanın aklı yok. O mereti aldı mı akıl mı kalıyor insanda? Ne akıl kalıyor?
An animal does not have a mind, but those people, they throw away their minds when they take those cursed things.
Ne düşünce ne hiçbir şey kalıyor.
They can no longer think clearly. They lose it all.
Hayvan hiç olmazsa aklı yok ama başkalarına zarar vermez.
An animal does not have a mind. However, it does not harm anyone, at least.
Bu insanoğlu aklı gitti mi yani kendi elinden hadi deliler o başka mesele, onlar garipler geçinip gider ama böyle kendi kendine aklını başından getirsin diye bir madde alıp su içersen koklarsan bilmem ne yaparsan aklın gitsin diye bunu yaparsan bundan daha kötü şey olamaz.
There are crazy people who don't have a mind, who cannot be blamed for their state, but there are people who intentionally want to become crazy by taking substances, by taking those toxics in order to lose their minds, which makes them do all kinds of crazy things.
Allah senden razı olmaz.
Allah Almighty, if you do so, will not be pleased with you.
Allah senden hiç razı olmaz.
Allah Almighty will not be happy at all with you.
Sana gadabı enir.
You will be drawing Allah Almighty's anger and wrath upon you.
Çünkü başkalarına zarar veriyor.
Because you're not only harming yourself but also others.
Kendilerine zarar veriyor. Ümmete zarar veriyor.
They're harming themselves, they're harming others, they're harming the whole Muslim community.
Şimdi burada bunu çok çoğalmış. Allah'tan korkma yok.
And people doing these bad things have increased. People no longer fear Allah Almighty.
Allah hatırlamıyorlar. Allah hatırlamayınca
They do not remember or remind themselves of Allah Almighty.
tabii başka şeyden de korkmuyor. Allah'tan korkmayan kimseden, her şeyden korkar.
But those who do not fear Allah Almighty, they will be fearing everything.
Bir şeyden korkmaz değil de her şeyden, Allah'tan korkmayan her şeyden korkar ki Allah da Azze ve Celle'den korkmaz.
Those who do not fear Allah Almighty, they are not fearless people. They are people who are afraid of everything.
Allah'tan korksa iyi olacak.
Because if they would be fearful of their Lord Allah Almighty, then they would be reasonable, and then things would be good for them.
Güzel olacak. Allah'tan korkmadığı için kötülerin en kötüsü oluyor.
But as they do not fear Allah Almighty, they are becoming worse than the bad.
Allah muhafaza etsin.
May Allah Almighty protect us.
Allah bizi bu güzel ahlaklı insanlardan eylesin inşallah.
May Allah Almighty make us to be together with those good and beautiful people with good character.
Yani dediğimiz gibi dünya kötülerle doldu.
As we said, this world is filled up with bad people.
Çok doldu ama iyiler de var yani.
And while this world is filled up with bad people, there are still good people.
İşte şey gibi insanlar, pırlanta gibi insanlar da var.
There are still people like diamonds.
Onlarla beraber olun.
Be with those good people.
Kötülerden uzak durun.
Stay away from bad people.
Kötülere yaklaşmayın.
Don't approach bad people.
Nasihat duydular mı Aldılar mı almadılarsa hiç yaklaşma.
You may give advice, but if they don't accept that advice, then stay away from them and don't even approach them.
Uğraşma.
And don't bother. Just stay away.
Allah'a havale et. Sen git iyileri bul.
Leave it to Allah Almighty and go find the good ones.
İyilerle beraber ol.
And be together with the good ones.
Allah muhafaza etsin.
May Allah Almighty protect us.
Bu ümmeti de sırf burası değil. Her tarafta aynı şekilde.
And this does not apply to here only. It's everywhere is the same.
Müslüman alemini mahvetmiş şeytan
Shaitan has destroyed the Muslim world.
ve avanesi
Shaitan and his followers have ruined the Muslim world.
her türlü şekilde mahvetmiş.
And they ruined the Muslim world in all ways.
Peygamberimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem dediği gibi ahir zaman din garip olacak.
And it is, as our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that religion in the end of times will be foreign.
Müslümanlar çok ama faydaları yok.
The numbers of Muslims is enormous, but they don't have any benefit or value.
Hani o şeye bir faydası yok. Çokluklarının hiçbir şey yok. Faydası olmayan bir şey oluyor.
The quantity of Muslims does not have any influence or impact or value.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin beraber olmayınca.
And that is because when you are not with Allah Almighty, this is what happens.
Allah yardım etsin.
May Allah Almighty help us.
Allah muhafaza etsin bizi inşallah.
May Allah Almighty protect us all.
Allah salihlerle beraber, muhsinlerle, ihsan sahiplerinin beraber olun inşallah.
May Allah Almighty make us to be together with the doers of good. May Allah Almighty make us together with those who possess benevolence. And may Allah Almighty make us be together with those doers of good.
İnşallah.